Welcome back to part 3 of the Supermarionation project interview as part of the Power of Working Together Better series. In this part, myself, Christina Griffiths, and Oliver Grig, the project manager involved, will delve deeper into the factors that helped his people work together better. I hope you enjoy it. So what sort of things did you do to ensure that business objectives were pushed through? You said you had regular weekly meetings. Was there anything else you did that happened to make sure that this occurred, that everyone understood where they were and what objectives needed to be achieved that week? How did you handle that?
As I said, we had the production schedule, which was like the Bible, which was this big hulking Excel spreadsheet, which, as I said, would spit out these kind of warnings and had automated dates, and you would feed information into it. But it was amazing, and it told us what discs had to go at the end of the week, and it also told them told the distributors how many discs to press of any particular release based on there was data that went into it based on that's the other thing, is predicting how many you're going to sell of something and sort of knowing how many you're going to need and then making sure that they're going to get shipped to the right time.
What regular things did you do to make sure that the business objectives got hit, basically? So you had once a week meetings that happened, and we talked about those, but I wonder whether there was something else you did regularly. It sounds like what you did was you printed off this Excel. Was it a print that you had?
No, I never printed it off. There was one of the production managers that was there. She did used to like printing it off on these big A2 sheets just so she could look at it, because she liked having a piece of paper or A3. But I did it all on my computer. I wasn't going to start wasting paper about it. No. So yeah, there was that. I had an awful lot of conversations with people. I was a lot of the time I was on the phone with people. Yeah. I think I remember being on the phone a lot, and keeping in touch with everybody, really, making sure that they were hitting their deadlines, making sure they weren't kind of going over budget in terms of that stuff, making sure that we had enough stock of everything, making sure that kind of keeping on top of costs. That's the other thing in terms of was really keeping on top of costs. And so there was that always sort of weighing up between wanting it to be the most amazing Blu-ray box set that ever was, but then also wanting to make it affordable. And we had all these amazing samples that would have cost 30 quid just for the box, for us to buy, let alone to sell the bloody thing. And you're like, yeah, it looks great, but we do want to actually be able to make some kind of money on this thing. And so there's kind of balancing all that stuff. So that was definitely mine, and as I said, the financial controller, although he wasn't allowed out of his office very much, so he didn't tend to see the samples. He'd just see the bill and go, how much? So it was my job to make sure that he didn't scream that too loudly.
No, okay, I can see that. So there were lots of one-to-one conversations in between the weekly meetings that happened.
Yes.
And then I presume then within the groups, the technical groups, they also met regularly, I guess, independent of the weekly meeting.
Absolutely, and I used to sometimes be dragged into those meetings too. Yeah, the studio had one, the production would have one, the restoration people would have one. The creative team, I tended to kind of stay out of it a little bit, as in the people making the documentary itself, just because I'd only go in really when I had to, just because that was definitely a case of too many cooks and the broth, just because, and that's often the case with these things, when films go wrong, it's because there are conflicting people coming in and trying to pull it in too many different directions. And so there was quite a unified movement there, and as I said, the creative team was very creative and had creative sensibilities and could be very sensitive about it. And so it was best to just ensure that everyone knew that we were working towards the same thing, but that certain deadlines needed to be hit and certain things were unreasonable, and people sort of accepted and understood that. And then I, to as much as possible, let them get on with it.
So did you, because timing was so sensitive here, and you knew already you were working against the tide of it being pushed out all the time, did you touch base with these groups in between the weekly meetings to find out where everybody was and just to make sure that they were likely to be on the weekly deadline? Or did you wait for the whole week?
No, I think I did, and largely it was inferred by other things that were happening that I had an involvement with, i.e., that there was a particular shoot going on with one of the contributors, and whether they'd got all that done, or whether there was a particular recreation that was being done, or whether a particular bit of film, that restoration was complete. Do you know what I mean? So there were deadlines along the way as well as the overall deadline, and so if those deadlines were not being hit, then I would always have to catch up with them and talk to those people along the way. So there was very much kind of keeping on top of things in terms of, and sometimes they'd come to me going, where the bloody hell is this thing? It was meant to be here. But often I'd be going to them going, where's this thing that you were meant to deliver? Preferably before the people cried, where's this bloody thing? That was the other thing. It was smoothing the lines between the interconnected departments.
And I suppose this is a question that may have happened before this project, was what sort of regular things happened to connect people with each other? Because I think what you were saying is that before this project, people knew each other anyway. So this project wasn't, you didn't have a new bunch of people coming in to do this project. It's mainly people you knew or knew of each other. So it sounded like they got good relationships already. Was there something that the company was doing to ensure that the connections happened? So rather than just being a transactional turn up, do your technical thing, go home, what did they do to make sure that people kind of bonded a bit more?
I think, as I said, a lot of it came from the fact that a lot of the people that worked there were fans, genuinely had an interest in being there, and that came down to recruitment. I think in certain areas that company was really good at recruitment, and it was more to do with the person and sort of the feeling that you got from them and their sort of shared love and interest of the product, essentially, but the subject matter and the product, and so there was a shared interest that way. Also, was the old days, everyone used to come into the office largely. As I said, there were a couple of designers that didn't, but most people had personal relationships because of proximity and working together. And then the other side, I think we did social things. We were very good at doing exciting Christmas parties and sort of summer do's, and sort of we had a really nice financial controller that often used to sort of just say, right, just knock off early on a Friday at 4 o'clock, which sounds silly, but we worked hard. And so saying, him going into the pub and putting the company credit card behind the bar for a few hours on a Friday night was great, and there was a good turnout in those days that would come. And so I think there was a real sense of community, and people did know and like each other, which was nice.
Yeah, that's I can see how that would work. That's great, thank you. So what sort of experience did people have of working there? So if you were to speak to the people involved doing this work at that time, how might they describe it?
I think they'd all say it was fun, because it was fun. It was a great project to work on, and it's exciting being. I mean, you have to remember that the majority of the things that we released while we were there were old things, and so we were releasing a series that had been on TV in the 50s or right up until previous year. So, but it was stuff that we'd seen before, and we were releasing it, and people were excited to see it on Blu-ray and DVD, but it was not really creating anything. If we may have done some extras, so we go and interview some of the actors, maybe even do a little documentary, but this was a very different thing. This was a release and of itself. We were creating a film that we released theatrically, released here, and it was a feature-length film. It was the first time we'd done a feature, so I think everyone was quite excited to be doing it, and so everyone would say it was fun, firstly, and great to be involved in, but I think everyone would say it was stressful, because there were stressful moments, and I think things are stressful when you care about it. That's the other thing. Mm-hmm. If you didn't care, you wouldn't find it stressful, and I think the nature of the artistic temperaments made it exciting as well. There was never a dull moment. But yeah, I think essentially people would describe it as a good experience, which had its moments.
Yeah, and would you say that it would be satisfying or memorable for those people?
Definitely
Yeah,
both of those things. Memorable, as I said, in the sense that it was unique in terms of its scope and sort of size and the things that we got to do with it. But also just the length of the project and the kind of the all-encompassing nature of it. It really did sort of touch every aspect of the company. Everyone had a role to play in it, and as I said, this huge sort of expanded cast. And so, yeah, I think hugely memorable and hugely satisfying, and I think people should be rightly be very proud of it.
yeah,
And yeah, I'd like to think people are and not too
yeah.
scarred
So
by it.
yeah, I would say proud. I could feel that from this. And what sort of behaviours did the individuals have that made this a success, do you think? What were the key sorts of behaviours?
Um, I suppose a work ethic and a real kind of dedication. In most cases, a genuine desire to kind of get on and be, nice to people, which I think is
Yeah,
is important. Lots of people forget that that's the case. And I think really a kind of an ability to communicate. There was quite an open nature at the company, and a kind of sort of people felt that they could say things to each other. The people didn't kind
yeah,
of feel like they had to sort of sit there and be quiet. People would vocalize concerns or opinions, and that was generally good. And anyone could have an idea. So yeah, I think I think people having a shared feeling of involvement and ownership, and also people wanting to produce the best that they could, I would say.
yeah. I mean, it sounds like the biggest challenges were a result of the fact that people want to produce the best that could be done. You know, that sounds like where the
Absolutely.
biggest challenge. Yeah,
My
it
job
came
was
from
never
that.
going back and going, come on, try a bit harder here. My job was
Yeah.
normally going, don't you think you could stop soon? It looks great. You know what I mean? It was very
Yeah.
much not the other way around, which is a nice problem to have.
Yeah, I mean, there are always challenges with projects. They never start out exactly as you imagine them to be. There's all sorts of them. That's why it makes these interviews interesting.
Mission
So,
creep. Mission creep.
yeah, always. So, and I think the thing that's implicit in what you're saying there is also the trust that you'd already built because you already knew each other. So you felt like you could in fact speak your mind, and that's one of the challenges you have if you've got a new group of people that takes a while for the trust to build up.
Yeah. No,
So that was
absolutely. I
yeah.
would say that
So,
would have been if we didn't have those relationships. Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, it wouldn't have been what it was, and I'm not sure it would have got done at all. Quite possibly.
no. No, so I mean, but you did have a few people come into the project that you didn't know, and I suppose you were also working with people who were kind of on the outside. How did they experience you as as an organisation? Do you think what sort of things do you think they would have said?
Well, that's another good thing about the organisation, was I think all of the people could see the love and the interest that we had with it. So one thing that everyone said, particularly the contributors, um, into the documentary, the people who'd worked on these shows in the first place, so the voice actors, the puppeteers, the people that made the puppets, the special effects experts, all of these people could see how much we loved it, and could see, do you see what I mean? So I think they
Yeah,
they felt flattered and
they could.
enjoyed the care that we were showing to it, and I think everyone got that impression. So I think
Yeah,
even and also at every level, people got to do things that they enjoyed and got to do. So even the packaging people that were making this box set, it was exciting for them. They normally just make a standard bloody box, DVD box that looks like this, and maybe they'll put it in a sleeve or something like that. So someone to come in and go, no, we want something that hasn't been
totally
done
different.
before, and we're going to
Yeah,
design it, and we want to try and for them it's something exciting. And so I think everybody was on this kind of same mission together, I suppose. So I think everyone that came into it, I'd like to think, at least maybe they would have thought like, wow, I can't believe that got done. That, if they were late in the progress or in the process, or someone would say, "Oh, we're releasing this thing next week. Do you mind if we just do a quick interview because we think you'd be great?" Sorry, we haven't done it yet. They might think, "Wow, these guys are leaving this late." So I don't know, but I think they'd still think, "Well, they really want this to be good if they want to do this right up until this point."
Yeah, okay. So they would have seen the fact that it was sometimes done on the fly, but they would have got caught up in your enthusiasm and
But I think
passion.
also that's that having, if you ever watched the documentary, a lot of the show was done on the fly. They were making it up as they went along, and that's what's great about any of these things. I mean, they made up a word. Supermarionation is a made-up word because they were literally making it up. They didn't know what they were doing. A lot of it. How are we going to make this look like it's a real explosion, or how are we going to do this? And so they're just people playing in sheds. There's a lot of it.
And sometimes that pressure of the deadline and the requirement to get something done does create the best creativity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Well, that was it. So they had deadlines, and I said that a lot. It's like, they've got to get the film in, get it turned around, get the thing done, so they can show it on TV. They were right up against it as much as we were.
Isn't it the case with Shakespeare? I don't know if this is the myth or the truth, but didn't he write quite a lot of his stuff on the fly? He'd written half a play, and then he was writing. I'm sure there's stories about him writing it behind the scenes as it being
always. You would be absolutely amazed how down to the wire so many things go. I mean, there's some of my favorite films. There's good documentaries about how films get made, and films that you think of are total classics, and you just think that must have been so in there, literally doing reshoots and adding bits in and going, "Oh, this whole bit doesn't work," and having test screenings and having to redo some stuff. Literally up until sometimes there's people trying to make the film the day that it's meant to be released and having to drive these copies of the film to the theaters because it didn't get done and you're thinking, that is absolutely incredible. It doesn't look like that. It looks like the most polished, perfect thing. So yeah, that whole adage about swans and their legs under the water or whatever it is.
I think someone explained to me though that can be done. Slightly off topic, and we'll come back on topic at the moment. But I think it's worth pointing out that sometimes when that's done, it looks like the person is doing it without any basis. But the amazing results come because that person has is an artist and they have expertise to draw on, and that's why they're able to do that. So I just kind of don't want to, in an age where everything looks like you can achieve expertise in 5 minutes, I kind of just want to highlight the fact that sometimes it looks like it's done in 5 minutes, but actually it's on the basis of quite a lot of hard work from elsewhere.
Absolutely. And I totally agree, and I think that there's no way it could have been done in that kind of way without, as I said, knowing that the people on the heads of those groups exactly knew what they were doing. They were experts in their fields. They did know exactly how to do this, or they did know exactly the story about this, or they did know exactly what the actual hard deadline for this thing. You know what I mean? If you don't have all that real knowledge and experience, then you can't make those kind of decisions because it will just break.
Yeah, so it's just sort of honouring that piece, really. So if we can kind of think of, if you could summarise the attitude of the overall project team, what would you say that? If it was a few words, what would you say?
I think the attitude was generally one of excitement and sort of like a real kind of, come on, let's get this done. Obviously, like with any long projects, there were days where you're just like, oh my god, not this.
Maybe
why
too
is
much
this
excitement.
happening? Exactly. Well, not even too excitement, but sort of like certain things. There were always things that we'd look back on and go, I wish that had been slightly easier. But I think the attitude that everyone had was this just real desire to make it as good as it could possibly be. And I know I keep repeating myself, but I think if we hadn't had that, it just wouldn't have worked. And I think everything stemmed from that, and that was why it did work. And that's the only way a project's going to work.
Right. Okay. That's good. So come on, let's make this the best it can be, would be the sort of attitude statement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, not even that, and get the people that can do that and want
Yeah.
it. That's the other thing. I think it was a real mix of both the people that had the skills but also had passion about it as well, because it's very
Yeah.
difficult to find both. Sometimes you can find people that really, really want to do it but perhaps don't have the skills, or you have people that
Yeah.
really have the skills but couldn't really care less. And so to have both was a real privilege, and probably why the project works so well.
How do you think people in your recruitment department manage to get that combination? Because you said it's not always easy, is it? What did they do?
In some cases it was trial and error. In other cases it was literally, some of these people had come together out of sort of online chat forum things. And literally there are people that worked at the company that had just got to know each other on forums about these old TV shows. So there literally are nerd fans who have got chatting and then suddenly realize that they know people from the industry, or actually I used to work for the BBC restoration department, or I used to work on Doctor Who, and you go, oh, hang on a minute. And so they literally got to know each other. And so the restoration team, as I said, used to be part of the BBC and then ended up going back to the BBC, and then we bought them, but they got to know each other because of a shared love of this show. And that wasn't always the case, but always as part of the recruitment process, we'd discuss it, and you very quickly know if people are making it up and they've just looked on our website and gone, oh yes, and listing off TV shows that they don't know anything about. But you really tell the people that come in and speak with passion about it, or can remember little details about it. And so I suppose, yeah, a lot of it comes from having a good recruitment process that is more about the person than it is about but again, it's trial and error.
It was both, wasn't it? Really, you had they had to have the technical side, because they couldn't have just chatted about it. They couldn't just be amazing hobbyists.
No.
But it sounds like your recruitment department had a wider strategy, in the fact they had a long-term strategy. They would obviously, rather than have a project where they just do the recruitment, it sounds like they kept a net going over a long period of time, building up relationships and connections.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, absolutely, because although this was a bigger thing that we'd done, it was essentially a bigger version of lots of stuff that we'd done. And so we was a lot of the releases we did had restoration elements, or we restored the whole thing. A lot of them would have a little documentary or an interview with a actor or director or whatever. So we had worked with a lot of these people, and we'd formed a lot of these relationships, and they knew, I mean, that's also the people that buy these things knew that a network release, it used to be something that people on the forums or on the Facebook chat would call it the network treatment. So they'd want a show that hadn't been released, or had been released kind of badly. There are people that were less scrupulous, let's say, that would just find any old tape master, stick it out on DVD, and that would be that. And they'd be like, we hope this show gets the network treatment, which generally means a bit of restoration so it'll look good, maybe some bonus features that we'd unearthed, maybe some interviews with the cast, or get some old people together. Some love, literally love.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people really kind of that connected with this. And I think that's what the show, it is literally a love. That whole documentary is a love letter to those people. It's like pioneers, those kind of documentaries that you now see on Netflix about, people that were breaking boundaries at the time, not boundaries, but new ground in terms of technology. So yeah, very exciting.
It is very exciting. And the last question would be, what was your biggest lesson, at the end of the project, when you look back? What was the biggest lesson that you learned?
I think the one thing it taught me more than anything else is to try and see everything from everyone's point of view, because it's very easy in those things to get too focused on any one element, and so therefore you become annoyed by other elements that are having negative impact on that one element. Whereas if you can kind of step back and look at it as a whole, and kind of understand that, as I said before, everyone is just doing their own bit, and then sort of make everybody else in their bits understand that about everyone else in their bits. I think that's the one thing that people have to understand. Otherwise you get moaning, and then you get sort of problems between people, and then everything falls apart, and people get annoyed with each other, and then delays get worse. And so really it's about that shared goal and really understanding that people just want the same in the same way, and also making sure that that is what they want. And so there never is a point when someone goes, well, no, yes, there's yes, but up to a point, and they've now taken too long over this. And so there is managing that expectation but keeping everyone happy. Keep everyone happy would be my overall learnings.
Yeah, keeping everybody happy, but it sounds like how you did that was by understanding what they wanted, checking that it aligned to what needed to be done, and then help them understand how they were the same as the other people they were having conflict with. Is that
exactly
right?
so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, and that's no easy. It's no easy job sometimes. So well done for doing that.
No, it certainly wasn't.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, it sounds such a great project to have been involved with, and I'm sure you'll always remember it fondly, and all the people who worked on that project will also remember this fondly. And it's kind of why I'm doing this interview series, because when you work on a good project, it's just fantastic, isn't it? You know, you feel like your days fly by, and everything feels like it's worthwhile.
Indeed. Yeah, that definitely was.
That's a pleasure. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
good stuff. Thank you so much.
Cheers, Christina.
Yeah. Cheers. Bye. Bye. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed part 3, where Oliver Grig talks more about the factors that helped his people work better together on this highly successful Supermarionation project. I think you will agree that this project was more than getting work done. It was a project of love, where the people involved had a passion for producing something exceptional. Some of the key points that he made were the importance of scheduling regular meetings for effective messaging and communication. He managed to keep touch with everyone on an individual level to ensure that there were no surprises, so that deadlines weren't missed or budgets overrun. He talked about the importance of using his Excel spreadsheet to track progress and costs. Then there was the atmosphere, where open communication was encouraged and made possible between individuals and different groups of people. Ollie talked about how he had to step back and see the bigger picture more often, so that he was able to help others resolve their problems better. When we talked about the common attitude on the project, and he said it was one of excitement and let's get this done. People who worked on this project were united in their strong work ethic, dedication to project purpose, and willingness to communicate with others. And whilst the right skills and knowledge were important for anyone working on this project, attitude was key. The company took a long-term view of recruitment by building up a network of the people with the right kinds of attitudes. And the last point, one of Ollie's insights from looking back on the project was that even though it may have seemed chaotic at times, it was actually organised in a way that allowed for flexibility and adaptation to meet stakeholder needs.